What's up, everyone? We are going to get right into this full moon chart. But before we do, I want to preface this by saying that this is going to be a little bit less of an astrology shot and more like an astrology leader. I'm trying things a little bit differently. It is Mars retrograde. This is one that's hitting me quite personally. And I'm just feeling the need to try something a little different, keep it fun, mix it up, see how it goes. Lunations, new and full moons, they cast a tone over the following 2 weeks leading up to the next lunation. So I thought it'd be fun today is if we look at the full moon chart and discuss some of the other transits that fall within this 2 week period. So we're going to pack it all in here and see how we like it. So there are some things about this full moon chart that I really like. There are some things that make me wince. This is occurring on January 13th, 2025 at 23 degrees Cancer and 59 minutes. My ephemera is actually just listed as 24 degrees Cancer, so you might see a little bit of a differentiation on this, but this is what the software is pulling it up as. So anyhow, what we have here, the full moon in Cancer is always unique because it's ruled by the moon, which happens to be in its domicile, in its home sign. So we're going to get nice moon themes that correspond with this lunation. Yet, and I'll get into some of those in a moment, but yet we also have this very close conjunction with Mars. And Mars is retrograde. So this is a lunation that's really going to highlight our Mars retrograde process, our Mars retrograde story. There's something that comes to fullness for us. And this is happening in more than one way, because just a few days later, on the 15th of January, the sun is going to reach its opposition with Mars, bringing Mars the closest to Earth. So when a planet is opposite the sun, it is closest to Earth. We're feeling that planet more intensely. That planet is louder. And this is a critical point in the Mars retrograde cycle because this is where a lot of people will start to experience a turnaround, a turning point. Mars is still retrograde. It's going to be retrograde until the end of February, specifically February 23rd or 24th. And we still have some time to work with this, but usually it's around this time that people will start to feel like their problem is starting to be solved. We may not have the energy or the motivation or the power behind it to get it rolling, but the idea is starting to form. It's like the seed is starting to take form. We don't know what it's fully going to look like, but we can tell that it's growing into something. So this is usually a critical turning point for people. And so it's like we're getting like this double full moon around this Mars story. So think back to what's been coming up for you since December 6th. And I've said it before, I think the Mars retrograde story, I felt it as early as September. But this is a story that began in your Leo house. You want to take a look at your Leo house. You want to take a look at your Cancer house. And there could be similar, related, overlapping storylines, or that it could be a little bit separate from each. So you're going to want to check and see what is coming into fullness for you at this time. Because as I said, full moons bring things into full view. There's a culmination. We're able to see something. It's full of energy. This is a major point of reckoning in our story where we're able to understand and start to formulate solutions through whatever crisis or issue we've been working through. So that's a big deal. A couple of other things leading up to this full moon worth mentioning. Number one, we have an Eris station. Eris will be stationing direct on January 11th. So right around the time that I'm recording this, Eris is stationing. We're feeling it. And I've talked a lot about Eris on the channel before, but Eris always has to do with inclusivity. Eris always has to do with calling out corruption, and specifically corruption that alienates other people or oppresses other people. There's a calling out, and Eris saying, I deserve a seat at the table as well. So we may expect to see some of that revolutionary energy of Eris. Another thing that we're seeing right now is Venus is reaching her maximum elongation from the sun. And this is happening specifically on January 10th. She reaches her maximum elongation. This is a point where she's pretty bright in the sky. It's not her brightest moment, but very, very bright. And what we're going to see is Venus is going to start slowing down her distancing from the sun. And eventually the sun is going to start to catch up. And what's going to happen is Venus will station retrograde. And that's going to happen at 9 degrees Aries, maybe 10, on March 1st. So yeah, 10 degrees Aries. So just know that we're going to start to see Venus start to slow down. And that's a big deal. This is a turning point in her cycle where if you think about the Venus myth, she starts to get curious. She starts to get curious around what else is out there. So this is a time where Venus starts to become like a more questioning Venus, okay? And speaking of Venus, Venus is finding herself entangled in the square between Jupiter and Saturn. And I spoke a little bit about this in a recent video because we had a bunch of lunations ruled by the Saturn and Jupiter. And Jupiter, Saturn are societal planets. They tell us a lot about what's happening for us systemically, structurally, in the way that we live. And astrologers look at this as a really important dynamic because in 2020, we saw an alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. This is an opening square. So we're seeing some friction. There's a lot of new things that were implemented in our society around that time. Think about work from home, people questioning the legitimacy of vaccines. I mean, that's a thing, especially still with Saturn and Pisces. People thinking a lot about, how much we're interfacing face-to-face less. And something that we're experiencing right now under this square is topics of censorship. And this is something I predicted would be a thing under this configuration in my Jupiter and Gemini webinar, which is available discounted on my website right now. I predicted that censorship would be a thing. And here you have under this energizing of, more recently Mercury energized this square. You had Meta basically reevaluate their fact checking. And they said, we're not going to do that anymore, or we're going to do it significantly less and see how that goes. So now what we have here is Venus is energizing this square. So we're going to see topics that are more Venusian related to this square, and perhaps topics around gender, perhaps topics around sexuality, perhaps what we do for fun on the internet. I think the pornography censorship is going to become more pronounced here because starting on the new year, you have to show an ID to watch porn in more states in the United States. And so a lot of people are not liking that. So there might be something here with Venus around people's rights to watch pornography online. And who knows how else we might see that. I mean, Venus is going to show up a lot with substances like alcohol, marijuana. So let's see what is revealed under this. We're going to see specific meetups with Jupiter on the 14th of January, Venus coming into that square, and Venus is going to conjoin Saturn on the 18th. Now, personally, this is going to impact us in a completely separate way. Personally, Venus is in Pisces. Venus loves to be in Pisces. There's something expansive, the infinite capacity of love. Typically, we're interested in taking love and our ability to love and to care and to show up for other people, to be compassionate for other people, to be romantic, to be erotic. We're seeing these things more pronounced under Venus in Pisces. We may feel drawn to connect with our capacity to be in these many states. However, here with Saturn, we're meeting some resistance, or we're becoming aware of our resistance. We're becoming aware of what's standing between us and our happiness, our ability to love, our ability to be present, our ability to feel like satisfied in many ways. Like Venus deals with satisfaction in many ways. So there's definite hurdles here. And something I always am paying attention to is the financial inequalities. And that seems to be a big piece of the conversation going on right now, especially in connection with how costly medical care has become in the United States, and how that stands in the way of the American dream, really, the ability to live a comfortable middle-class life. And Venus here in Pisces, there's an excess there. So there's something maybe about the billionaire class that becomes scrutinized more so under this transit. And I think that going back to our full moon, the full moon in Cancer wants to protect, create a container of security to care and nurture for the things that you feel are most important for you. So that could be yourself, that could be your home, your family, whatever it may be, your craft, whatever is important to you. The full moon in Cancer says things about protecting, containing. Additionally, something I wanted to circle back to with this full moon in Cancer is the ability to cycle through our emotions in a healthy way. When I think about Cancer as part of a trifecta of the water signs, each water sign has a different relationship with emotion. Specifically, Cancer being a cardinal sign, it showcases the ability to move through an emotion in a healthy way without numbing, without hiding from it, and just allowing the tides to move to and fro. Here with Mars, there's irritation, there's anger, there's like hot tears that need to emerge. So this could be kind of a weepy, emo, sentimental, emotional kind of full moon. Full moons always heighten the waters. And so here there may be some, raging white waters that need to come out. Or I think about maybe a hot spring, okay? And that's something that Mars retrograde in Cancer is also seeming to really highlight, is protecting our energy, replenishing our energy. And there's something about it here. Mars can sometimes be a departure or a need to draw the line. Maybe there's something around drawing a line or departing from something, a practice, a commitment, a relationship that becomes a significant piece of many people's full moon experience. So before I get into the second half of the forecast for the full moon, just wanted to take a moment and remind you all that I've made some pretty exciting updates on my website. I'm planning, I'm in a second house perfection year, and so I'm planning to slowly overhaul my website. So you'll notice it looks a little bit different on there. It'll probably look even more different in the next several months. But I'm making some updates to my offerings. Something I'm really excited to unroll is the 75-minute astrology reading. I often feel like 60 minutes just is not enough time to spend with someone. I always have 15 more minutes worth of things I want to say. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes 90 minutes feels like it's too much. Sometimes I have no problem filling up the 90 minutes, but I've just been curating this idea that 75 minutes is the ideal amount of time for an astrology reading. And so I'm unrolling this 75-minute reading. I'm excited to try it out and see how it goes, see how you all like it. The other thing I have just unrolled is a 75-minute solar return focused reading. I do look at the solar return chart in every forecast that I do. However, the solar return reading itself is meant for people to get around their birthday so that we can really nerd out with some of these ancient and medieval forecasting techniques. You'll also have the option to add on an in-depth analysis of the monthly return charts. And if you're not sure about those, well, a lot of people saw what I was doing with them with my colleague Mo in our election forecasts, and we were using monthly return charts. So if you tuned in with us for that and you were curious about the monthly return charts, now you have a way to specifically book that with me. So those are some of the things I'm unrolling. There's going to be more. There's a lot of more webinars in my store as well. So if you want to do like a deeper dive study with me, you can get those webinars. Many of those webinars come with a workbook. So definitely go ahead and check that out, catherineurban.com. Now let's get into the rest of the forecast. Moving right along, we're going to animate this chart. We're going to go forward to January 17th. And here what we're going to have is a sextile between the Sun and Neptune. So this is an opportunity for us to connect with our more intuitive, psychic, imaginative side. Neptune always invites us to seek new possibilities, to open our mind, to let ourselves out the escape hatch. So this could be one where we have an opportunity to really tap into our creative or restful side. You know, Neptune invites us to float. And I mentioned here, now on the 18th, I already went through this, but Venus is going to meet up with Saturn. On the 19th of January, we see the Sun enter Aquarius. So Aquarius season is officially upon us, fixed air sign. This is the peak of the winter season here in the Northern Hemisphere. In the South, it's going to be peak summer. The following day, we have the Sun aligning exactly with Pluto. This does happen to be Inauguration Day. And we haven't seen this in many decades. I mean, as the astrology podcast and Nick Dagan Best have pointed out, we haven't seen a Sun-Pluto conjunction on election day since like 200 years ago, plus over 200 years ago. So it's been a long time since we've seen that. So we have a Pluto overcast onto this day. And one word I think we all need to get used to, and this is not like a partisan statement here, but you know, is oligarchy. Okay, the fact is that we have very wealthy people installed in positions of power, specifically like Trump and his cabinet, and we know that money and big money has influenced politics for a long time, which is why healthcare is such a problem for us, which is why the middle class is disappearing. And it really doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum is on. I mean, we're all impacted by this, and it doesn't take a lot to notice this. But oligarchy, that's a word that we need to get used to saying and like name it like it is what it is. And I think it's only going to get worse, especially when you have someone like Elon Musk influencing and purchasing elections, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well, which actually brings up another thing that I had in mind around this full moon in Cancer, is that Mars is out of bounds. And hats off to my colleague Hannah Kuhari over at Divine Sky Mystic for pointing out that Mars is out of bounds right now. And when a planet is out of bounds, it often behaves unpredictably and erratically, and it doesn't like to follow the rules. And Cancer is a sign that's very often associated with land. And the glyph of Cancer is like someone holding something. It's protecting. And what we're seeing as Mars has gone out of bounds back into Cancer is these sort of outlandish ideas around taking Greenland and renaming the Gulf of Mexico. And conversely, Canada saying, no, we're not going to become the 51st state. But if Washington and Oregon and California want to become a province of Canada, like we're open to that. Or you have Mexico saying, let's take the Southwest back and call it Mexican America. So you have like these nations sort of trolling each other, and hopefully it doesn't go beyond that. Hopefully it doesn't become the situation where things are really contentious with our allies. But what you do have is like Mars kind of hurling these attacks and saying like, we're going to take your land. So we are seeing that under this. So we'll see if it goes anywhere else. But I mean, Sun Pluto, we would typically see like huge assertions of power. Pluto is all about power grabs and blowing things up into a bigger deal. And so it would be interesting to see sort of what this first week of the new administration looks like under this. So moving along. On the 23rd, let's go to the 23rd. On the 23rd, Mars retrograde is going to make a little sextile with Uranus. That is something that you can look forward to, especially if you've been feeling really sluggish with the Mars retrograde. I know I have. Mars retrograde wants us to slow things down, protect our energy. Well, here, this is like a stroke of inspiration, a big idea, feeling spontaneity to move on something, to move inward on something, or just like getting some sort of inspiration around something that you want to do, some motivational inspiration. What we will also see around this time is Mercury coming to oppose Mars. This is always tense, argumentative, calling things out. And something that really kind of plugs in with this whole Cancer full moon of being able to cycle through our emotions, being able to move freely through something. Sometimes things need to be said. I was watching a show last night and the character just said, you know, sometimes it needs to be said. It just needed to be said. Sometimes we have to do ourselves a favor by getting something off of our chest. So things aren't always going to be the smoothest in terms of reception under an opposition like this. But sometimes things do need to be said. So this could be useful for, again, Mars retrograde, wanting to protect one's space, protect one's peace. Sometimes things need to be said. What we're also going to see is Mercury getting in on the square with Uranus. Again, inspiration, big ideas, light bulbs going off. Another one we can look forward to is Venus, exalted Venus. She's past the hurdle of Saturn. And now she's forming this lovely water trine with Mars. So it almost looks like, I experience this a lot in all my relationships really, but when there's an obstacle to be solved, and it might feel tense and uncomfortable for a moment, but once you work it out, you feel even more connected. You feel closer to the other person. And I think that that's kind of what is happening here with this water trine. Venus and Mars in a water trine, that's going to show up, especially with, you know, Venus headed into this conjunction with Neptune. That's going to make us feel like more connected on a soul level with other people, more emotionally in tune with other people. And we take like the friction of Mars in the trine with Venus, and it's hot. It's like this acknowledgement that we're different, but we work. And how often do you see that? I mean, there's the saying, opposites attract. So it's like the acknowledgement of our differences draws us in closer together. And there's this sense of synergy there. There's this magnetic pull toward the people that you love and admire and care about. So that could be a really fun transit for any relationship, really. Friendships, romantic relationships, even something collaborative. Like I used to play in bands, and I would think that this would be really great for that band chemistry. Lastly, the last big one that we need to cover before we get into the new moon in Aquarius, which we'll save for another time, obviously, is that Mercury's starting to pick up speed here. You know, Mercury was retrograde in Sagittarius, and it spent its time in Capricorn really trying to catch up to the sun. It's not going to catch up to the sun until about 2/3 of the way through Aquarius season. But here on the 27th, we're not going to see it here. So I'll just click over to the 28th. But on the 27th, Mercury enters Aquarius. And this is low key one of my favorite annual transits because I feel like the problem solving ability of Aquarius, the mastermind, the think tank, Mercury works so well here. And it's true. Mercury does have triplicity rulership in Aquarius. And that's one reason why Mercury thrives in Aquarius. I always find that this is a transit that helps me brainstorm, come up with cool ideas and concepts. I can fight my way through an equation. I can solve a puzzle. I can dream up new scaffolding of the ideas that are already, in my mental juggle. So you can create some new scaffolding here. I like that word for it, scaffolding, to kind of take a concept or take a situation to a level that works even better for you. There's something in like ingenuity. There's some ingenuity here with Mercury in Aquarius. And I think the mind is kind of buzzing a little bit. The mind really thrives when it can focus on something for a long while. And that's where the gift really comes from, is the fixed nature of Aquarius and the utility quality of Saturn. Like, let me work with what I have and make it even better or more optimal or more inspired. So of course, right away, Mercury's going to run into Pluto there. And that's something that I quite love because Mercury's alignment with Pluto helps us to become obsessed, helps us to really focus on something. So if you have a project that needs a lot of legwork to get going, and again, we have like one more month left of Mars retrograde. This is usually the point where some people start feeling inspired. They don't want to wait till Mars retrograde is over. They want to get going on the new thing. So this is an opportunity to deep dive into whatever creative project, research. I talked to someone yesterday who wants to clean out a storage locker. Whatever kind of project you need to get into, this is a configuration that has the focus to get you through it. My bad. I thought you all could see those charts with me. Oops. Anyhow, that's what I have for today. Those are the transits that we'll be working with for the next 2 weeks. I hope that this full moon in Cancer is ultimately nourishing for you. I know that Mars is going to bring a little bit of friction and heat, but maybe it's needed. Maybe it's part of our Mars retrograde process. I know some of us are feeling it more intensely than others, but hopefully the purging quality and being able to move through an emotional process will be ultimately restorative and nurturing for you. So that's what I got for today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.